So good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started because we have a lot to talk about and the sessions are short. And I want to give you as much information as possible. And as usual with most sessions, I'm up here all alone at the front. But I like to walk around, so I might be next to you as we go through this. What I'm going to talk about is career pathway strategies. It's my belief that, and I'm going to talk to you what I mean, at least my definition of career pathways here in a minute, but I think that any program can move forward in implementing career pathway elements, and I'm hoping to give you some ideas on things you might do to move yourself forward with a career pathway strategy or a career pathway service delivery model. Does that make sense? Is that why you're here? Okay. How many of you attended my session about this yesterday at the directors meeting? So we have a few of you. So some of this is going to be overlap. But then there's going to be some additional things because I'm going to focus more on just the direct service part of the model. So there will be, so don't panic that, you know, you've heard this before. Or you can panic and leave, I don't care. But there's going to be some overlap for you folks. I just want you to know who this character is before you. Just to give you some information, I've been in the field for a long time. I've had almost every role there is in the field, from teacher to local program director. I was a state director, and I've been a consultant, national consultant and trainer for the last 5 or 6 years, but I've been around for a long time. And I've been doing national training for quite a while. The reason that I got interested in career pathways is because for those of you who know me, have known me for a long time, you know that I was doing a lot of national training on serving adults with learning disabilities. That was sort of my thing for many years because I came into adult ed through the literacy sector, and many of the adults in a volunteer literacy program that we served, we had sort of arrangement with the adult ed funded program, and we were the literacy provider. We had an arrangement. I would serve the adults that were sort of 0 to 5, the hardest to serve, and they would serve the people who were higher level and wanting to get their GED and things like that. So that was our arrangement. And so I became really focused on serving those low-level students. And then when I became a state director in Maine, the commissioner of ed on my first week on the job said, "What's this WIA reauthorization? What's this career pathway business? Don't wait for the law to pass, just go ahead and do it." Like, okay. So I brought the partners together and started building a career pathway model because we knew, even though WIOA didn't happen until 2014, we've known for years that it was going to be, that career pathways was going to be emphasized. And so it finally did happen a couple years ago, and now we're all required, if we get federal funding, to do career pathways. Now, I was in Maine. A lot of the information that I was being given and models that I was being shown didn't fit the context of adult education, and they really didn't fit how we serve students in small rural programs. For example, if you don't have 20 students at the same time wanting to be a nurse, then a lot of the stuff that you're being given at the national level doesn't fit how you deliver services. So I really tried to emphasize 2 things in the career pathways work that I do. One is things that can work in smaller programs. What are smaller programs? How can they do this career pathway stuff? And then the other is, don't leave out the small or the low-level learner, because a lot of the national kinds of things that you're going to get, like curriculum and things, are for high-level folks. And if you serve, you know, mid to low level students also, you don't want to leave them behind. You don't want to create something that's going to leave out the lowest, the students who need us most. Okay? So just to make sure, to give you some information about why we're sort of focused on career pathways, is that it is in our national legislation. So if you get federal dollars, career pathways used to be optional, but now it is sort of a requirement. If you get federal dollars, you are supposed to be implementing or delivering career pathway strategies. And it's mentioned in the law. I provided some language. You can read that on your own. The way that I approach career pathways is this: talking about it as a system. I pulled the language from the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act that indicates when they're talking about career pathways, they're talking about building a system. Because often I go, you know, I'm delivering career pathways training around the country, and I'll say to people, are you doing career pathways? And they'll say, yes. And I'll say, well, what are you doing? And they'll say, well, we offer CNA students an opportunity to get their CNA certification. Or they'll offer a welding track. And those I call isolated or articulated pathways. It's not a career pathway system, which is what's described in WIOA, which is what we're supposed to be doing in adult education in terms of career pathways. We build a career pathway model so that all students, no matter who they are and what level they are moving in the direction of a pathway, or moving in a pathway direction. So that's the difference. Do we understand that? So when WIOA talks about a requirement of career pathways, they're telling you, they're talking about a system, a delivery system, okay? That affects every aspect of your program and every student that you serve. All right? And I wanted to pull the language from the law to indicate that. The other thing I wanted to make sure that we have the definition. Now, there's a lot of different definitions out there, right? Every system has it. CTE has one. The U.S. Department of Education has one. We're actually funded in our federal dollars through the U.S. Department of Ed, but it's really through what? The U.S. Department of Labor, because we're part of the workforce development system. They have one. Everyone has their definition. If we are adhering to our funder requirement, if we get federal dollars, then this is the definition, straight from the law, that we should pay attention to. And it includes a lot of things, not just the instructional component. That's why I wanted to make sure that you have the definition with you. You don't have to digest it or process it all now, but you'll have it with you for later to take a look at. So it's not just about the instructional piece. It's about making sure that the career pathways that you offer are informed by your economy, your labor market information. So if you're promoting jobs or career opportunities for your students, it should make sense with what your workforce needs are, right, in your area. Now, every state has a site, a website to go to. I think I share it with you on one of these slides if you don't have it. But you can take a look at you can drill down by area of your state and see what the projections are for your workforce needs and your workforce growth. That it makes sense to know that as people in adult education working with students who might ultimately need jobs down the road, or better jobs down the road, or different jobs down the road. So it's important, I think it's our responsibility as adult educators to know what the workforce needs are in an area if we're going to be talking to students about career choices, right? So it's about the workforce needs. It's about preparing an individual to be successful in getting what they need, to be successful in a given career choice. They mention in the definition apprenticeships because we are supposed to be providing students with job exposure opportunities. Again, not just giving them the education and training, but exposing them to jobs. That means things like job shadowing, internships. Do we do that for our students? Other education systems do. We're being asked to do more of that, finding ways to connect our students to jobs as they prepare for their own employment. There's advising support is mentioned in the definition. Offering education, job training, and workforce preparation, all three of those things to students in our instructional delivery. I'll say more about that later in the presentation. It's also about credentials. Do they have the right, not just the skills, but they need the right credentials in order to either move to post-secondary, or once they go through post-secondary, are they getting the right credential to get that job that they want or need? So it's about credential attainment, and then making sure that they understand that it's not one choice in terms of career, that career choices is sort of a lifelong thing. So finding ways to visually show that they can come in, get what they need for employment, move along a progression of a career path, along a career ladder, and that's a piece of a career pathway model as well. So just the definition that we should be following related to career pathway speaks to more than just the instructional delivery of a articulated pathway that we tend to think about when we think about career pathways. The definition says system. The definition says kind of impacting a lot more than just the instruction, but other support kinds of services that we need to be addressing with students. Does that make sense? So you have the definition. The other important thing to know from the law is this idea of IET. If you get federal funds, you are supposed to be doing some type of IET model, IET programming. And what that means, so that we're all aware of it, it means providing adult education, that basic skills component that we already do, we've always done, providing some kind of job training. Typically that's done through a partner, whether we partner with CTE, an employer, a post-secondary program, or just having our teachers do contextualized instruction. There are various ways that you can do job training. The third piece is what WIOA calls workforce preparation activities. All that is your soft skills, the things that employers are telling us everybody needs. If you're delivering your instruction, these three things, workforce prep or work readiness training or soft skills, whatever you want to call it, job training and basic education, if you're giving those three things to a cohort of students at the same time, that is what an IET model is. Now that doesn't have to be everything that you do in your delivery, but you have to have, if you're getting federal funds, you're supposed to be doing it, some of it, something. You have to do some kind of IET, okay? This sort of reinforces this idea of a system. Career pathways is really, again, affects every aspect of your program, how you market your program. Do you even talk when you promote your program in your community or with your students that you're about more than the GED or learning how to read and write? Do you talk in terms of workforce prep? We're going to skip partnerships. Your administrators are supposed to work with the various partners that are critical to a workforce or a career pathway system. Alignment, making sure that your services that you provide in your classroom align to the next steps that students take, whether it's jobs or a college class or advanced job training. Making sure that whatever you do offer in terms of pathways makes sense with what your workforce says. You know, if you're contextualizing your instruction to, you know, I don't know, retail, when your workforce needs in your area maybe are manufacturing or healthcare, then it's really not, your career pathway efforts are supposed to be driven by your labor market information. That's all I'm saying. So make sure you take a look at that. And then when we get to the actual delivery, we need to see, are we doing, do we have career-related assessments in our assessment process? In our orientation, do we talk about career goals and career planning? In our instructional approach, are we finding ways to not only teach the skills, but access job training and get those critical work readiness skills? It may be that you have to organize and deliver your instruction differently or your services differently, and we'll talk about some ideas. Do you offer career advising or have a partner offer that to students who need it? It's a critical piece of a career pathway service delivery model. These are all elements of a career pathway model, comprehensive model. Of course, this is the piece that we all think about when we think about career pathways, the instructional component, and then helping support the transition to the next step. You know, it used to be in adult ed, we only had to get them to the end, right? And then they had to figure out the transition piece on their own. Now we as an adult ed system are being held accountable for the transition into and through the next step. So in order to be successful at that, we have to do some planning with them. So you have to integrate that into your delivery somehow. Who's going to do it? How's it going to happen? And then, of course, once you get your service delivery, your model in place, that's when you kind of make sure that it sticks around. So you worry about then the policy and the funding and monitor the outcomes. Is it working, what we've put in place? But this system approach is how you want to think about developing and implementing a career pathway strategy. Okay? Good. This is just another. So this slide basically indicates that, again, when I talk to programs, they get angst when we start talking about a system and all affecting all the pieces. Do we have to start over? Do we have to create something new? And I say no. I say, you know, I've done it before. I've taken a whole state with, you know, moving forward with a whole statewide career pathway model. And the first thing that we did was say, no, you do what you already are doing, but you look at what elements are these career-related elements or activities that you want to integrate along with your instruction and sort of apply the career context across your service delivery model. So you look at your assessments. You're already doing TABE or CASAS or whatever it is you do here in Utah, and you add some things that will help assess abilities, interests, things like that related to careers. There are career-related assessments. You want to make sure you have that in your assessment process. You want to make sure that there's some opportunity, if students need it, for career exploration. Do you offer that? You're supposed to. So you have to find a way that, and sometimes it's not you doing it, it's getting a partner, connecting with the right partner. You know, career pathways really is about partnerships, right? This idea under our federal legislation, the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, is to coordinate services among people who provide services. And so, you know, the first thing you always do is see if there's a partner that can or is willing to do it before you try to create it on your own. And then you want to look at the actual instructional approach, getting the skills they need, and then the transition, making sure that advising is not just once or at the beginning, at the end, but it's all the way through. So these pieces that we are to integrate that related to a career pathway model, we just need to integrate across what we already do. It's not throwing everything out and starting new. It's adding the career context, I like to say, to our services, our service delivery. Does that make sense? Okay, and I think the challenge for us is to make sure that that what we deliver or what we create works in adult education, that it will work in small programs, and it will include not leave behind our low-level learners. Okay? So what we can, and then we also need to make sure that we have different populations, right? So what we build has to work for our ADE students, our ESL students, if we serve corrections, our low-level students. There's lots of things to think about. And it may be that we choose different strategies for different populations, right? Because, you know, a lot of times when I'm working with programs, I'll say, you know, because again, and this is true for rural programs, so think about this as you think about how you might approach career pathways. In Maine, I don't know if this happens in Utah, but in Maine, for example, there's a Maine site typically. You know, Maine is a very rural state. And so there's a Maine site usually, and then that fiscal agent might have 10 very remote sites where they serve a few students a year, but it's essential for them to keep these sites so that, you know, because we're supposed to have access, you know, pretty much throughout any area of the state. So what you might do at a Maine site might be different than what you have the resources to do at one of these smaller sites. So picking different strategies depending on the sites and so forth is an option. So there are basically 12 things that every program should do to create a career pathway service delivery model. If you do these 12 things, you'll be well on your way to creating this model. So we have to promote ourselves as a career pathway program. So look at your materials, your website, your elevator speech, anything that reflects how you promote your program. Does it have a career pathway message? Do you use language about we help people prepare for college and career success? You know, so looking at the language that you use to promote your program and how you promote it, you know, people always say, well, they think of us as a GED program only. Well, we've made them think that. You know, when I started in education, in adult ed, anyone start in the 80s like me? When I started in adult ed, GED was like just emerging. It was all about adult high school. And the reason it took a hold so fast and the adult high schools went away so quickly, I don't think in Utah, but most states, the reason it went away is because it was so much cheaper. But, you know, back when I started in adult ed, the GED was very unknown. Over the last 30 years, we have made ourselves be thought of across the country as the place to go to get your GED. And we can just as easily change that to help people understand we can help prepare you for college and careers. That's the message. So looking at how you promote your program, making sure that you're engaging with the right partners. This is for our administrators in the room, your workforce, your employers, Voc Rehab System. Offer career assessment and exploration in your orientation and assessment process. Do you do that? So think about ways, and if you want examples, more examples than I'll provide you in this session, you can certainly email me and I will say, well, these are the various assessments that you might choose. Because there are some from very free. I think I handed a free one out that I came across at when I was flying somewhere, career clusters inventory. But there are free ones all the way up to very expensive ones. So it just depends on how elaborate you want to get. But you should have some career assessment in your assessment process. You should have some kind of discussion about career goals and planning for achieving those goals during your orientation process. All right? Oh, I have them numbered. Who knew? Okay. My assistant did that. How about that? Okay. The number 5 is an academic and career plan. How many of you give your students a learning plan now? Based on the assessments they take and the goals that they set, you sort of put it all into a template and they have their own learning plan. Ohio has had that in place for 25 years. It's required that every student have an individual learning plan. Now, if you look at the law, WIOA, it says that everyone we serve should have a career plan. Now, because we're adult educators, I think it should be called an education and career plan, not just a career plan. But do you know that? Has your state gotten far enough along to talk to you about that? Because it is required that everyone served in workforce development have a career plan. So finding, if you want to look at templates, I can give you 1 million to look at. Just email me for some examples. But the students should be guided by their own education and career plan, which sort of is a summary of where they are academically, where they are with their career interests, what goals they've set, and there's some indication of what they need to do to achieve those goals. That's what an education and career plan is. And again, I can share templates with you. I never know what people have and what people need, so I always just mention all the things, and then if you want more, you can email me. One thing that I have that I typically do with most programs is have them go through a gap analysis. And that is taking a look at all these things that are required in a career pathway model, sort of see what you have and what you're missing, and then figure out what you're missing. That's the information and resources that you need. And everyone seems to always be different on that, what they have and what they're missing. Yes, sir?
I just kind of had the insight when you were talking about the career plan piece.
Yes.
And some of my students are serving life without parole, and I thought, so should it just be education? And then I thought, no, they can actually find employment within the prison.
Mm-hmm.
They have different menial, jobs and so forth. Mm-hmm. And so we could kind of adapt it to that environment as well.
Right. Yes. I think, yeah. And when you look at these pieces, that's why I said earlier, you have to think about how you can do it for the different populations that you serve, because usually one way is not going to work. Like for ABE students, ESL students might be different, your corrections people might be different, or how they use that plan might be obviously different in this case. But a career education and career plan, critical element. The next one is career advising, how you're going to do career advising. I'll show you examples of actual pathways, but you have to have them laid out so that when you're having the discussions with students at orientation or when they get to class, you can show them. If you want to go be a nurse, this is what you got to do. If you want to go and be a welder, this is what you have to do. Do you have those maps? There's tons available. I think that someone told me that in Utah you have the Futures that has some pathways. Every state has pathways. If you don't like yours, you can look at all the different states and see which ones suit you. But you should be using maps to help students think about what they need to do in order to progress along a pathway. I already talked about integrating with your instruction the employability skills piece and the job training. Usually adult ed programs are doing this on their own, finding a way to integrate this and make it very intentional in their instruction, and then they're finding a partner to do the job training, or making sure that that's the next step when you're done with them, right? And then contextualizing instruction. If you really want to be doing a career pathway related instruction, that means you have to be doing contextualized instruction. We'll say more about that. I'll say more maybe about that in this session, but that's what the next session I do is about. And then exposing your students to jobs is number 11. That's making sure that you're providing internships, job shadowing, connecting students to jobs. Some programs are actually having a speaker series. So every Friday, I say this, I'm giving this as an example because it's the one I just heard from my own very local program in Ohio. So every Friday they made a speaker, and they either have someone from the college or someone from the community in a specific job come in and talk to students. So they're being exposed not only to certain things, resources at the college and processes they need to go through to get to apply for college, but they're also connecting to professionals in some of the high demand job areas that are in our area. And then assist students with transition. And it doesn't mean, it means helping them come up with a plan, a step-by-step plan to transition into that wherever they're going next, okay? So these 12 things, if you do these 12 things, you will have a career pathway service delivery model, okay? So let's take a look at some more detail. So I talked about promoting, creating a college and career culture. So this language is straight from the guidance on state plans on how to approach career pathways in our federal law. And it talks about creating a college and career culture, refers to the environment, attitudes, practices in schools and communities that encourage students to obtain the information, tools, and perspective to enhance access. Of course, they probably used way more words than they needed. But basically, we need to create an environment and culture that gets our students excited about college and career readiness. When they walk into your program, do they see pictures of people working? Do you have job boards on your wall that have like positions that are available? Do you have resources in your center that talk about the college programs and talk about various experiences or requirements in various jobs? Take a look at your environment and see what does it say about your program. What language do you use? So college and career talk. When you're in college, do teachers say that? I visit a lot of programs around the country, and I'm so sick of hearing, you need that for the test. Why can't you translate that into, well, if you're on the job, this is where you might use that skill. Or when you're in college, you have to be able to do this. We can do that. We can change the language. We can certainly go say more than because you need it to pass the test. Why do I need to learn fractions? Because you need to pass the test. Well, you need fractions to know fractions for a lot more than that. Okay? So messaging, the talk. Are you talking the career pathways talk? Creating the job in your program creating enrollment in your program like a job. There are some programs that are doing that. You want to prepare people for success on the job, so treat their experience in your program like a job. They have to apply, and attend and all of that. Have students take ownership of their career path. I'm going to say more about student engagement here in a little bit, because I think that that's what a lot of small programs, small rural programs can do, is kind of do what they've always done, but provide opportunities for students to use that information or that learning and turn it into their future career planning efforts. Okay? Make sure that you're offering those opportunities, internships, job shadowing, things like that. And then maybe you can require a college visit or some kind of, you know, if this is the job that you want when you're finished here, interview someone or work for a day with these people, with someone in this position. That could be a requirement that you offer. You know, if you know, challenge your students. If you, when they come into orientation, say, I challenge you to have a job or an acceptance to college by the time you finish. You know, most colleges do that. When their students come in the freshman year, the president says, I challenge you. Well, why don't we challenge our students? I mean, those kinds of things send a college and career message to our students. What are some strategies that you can use to, for small rural programs? So addressing some of the things that are critical to a service delivery, a career pathway model, you might offer a career exploration course. So some programs will say, we don't have the resources to do this. We don't have a partner that's willing to come in, like if they're from Workforce Services, and offer this to our students. And so some will say, or some programs have said, so we're going to offer, before you get in, after your orientation and before you get into class, if you truly need some career exploration, because you need to have some kind of decision, and employment is certainly a goal that you need down the line, then we're going to offer like a 2-week career exploration course or 1 week or whatever it is. But they'll offer that as a separate thing. That's what many programs, smaller programs, have done in their service delivery, is integrated this as a separate sort of offering in their service delivery. Next is connecting with partners to find internship opportunities or job shadowing opportunities for your students. Connect with your bigger employers in your area and see if they're willing. That's one way that you can engage employers, is are they willing to either come in and meet with your students, or would they offer these kinds of things to your students? But that's something that you have to figure out. That's a piece of this that you have to figure out. Intensive student engagement. If you're a small program and you're serving 10 students in your class, and they're each in 10 different directions in terms of their career choices, you know, you might not be the program that we hear about. I mean, this is what cracks me up about our, like, just the way life is in general. When we hear, you know, there's a big emphasis right now in career pathways. Now, do you know, I mean, if I said to you, what's the program that we always hear about successful? Do you know? Like, I don't know if you're entrenched enough in the career pathways to know this, but is there any program that you always hear, oh my God, they do it so well?
Is that the ICANN?
No, it's not the ICANN, which I'll explain later, or the IBEST that you might be thinking about, even though that doesn't work either for smaller programs. But the thing, everywhere I go, people say LaGuardia, the LaGuardia Adult Ed program. Okay, folks, if I had $8 million and 50,000 students, I could run 30 different pathways too. That is not adult education across the nation, okay? So, I'm thinking that we need to do more student engagement if we're the typical small program that can't run 30 different career instructional pathways at the same time. It may be that we design our instruction a little or deliver it a little differently. So this is what I mean. So for I've been on a fractions kick these 2 days here in Utah. I don't know why, because I'm not really a math person, but it just keeps popping in my head. So say you're a teacher and you teach fractions, but it can be anything that you teach. Anything that you teach, whether it's reading, low level, high level, whatever. It can be anything you teach. You teach it the same way you've always taught it. But you give students time after teaching it to talk about or do some kind of activity where they apply those skills to a career context. Because you're one teacher teaching all these, you can't come up with 12 different lessons for all the different contexts, that career directions they might be going. So put that on the students. It may be that you have to design your instruction differently in terms of giving them time to either research or do an activity where they're applying skills, or talk about the different ways that what they just learned applies in the work world. But engage your students in the process of contextualizing instruction and putting it in the frame that will work for them based on their career direction. So intensive student engagement. This can be done the whole step of the way. Getting students to do their own career plan. That was what's referenced here with the ICANN program that Hawaii came up with. So since it's required and they think that they don't have someone that can sit down and do a career plan for every student, they're having the students do it. So while they're going through the program, they also have to build their own career plan, and at the end of the program, they not only graduate with their GED, they have to present to their peers their career plan. So again, student engagement is a great way to do some of this career pathway implementation. I always want to emphasize when you're integrating or developing a career pathway model, that you not only do it for the low level or the higher level standards or skills or students, but you develop something that's going to work for low level, and I'll show you an example of that in a minute. The other thing is focus on metacognitive skills. Again, this kind of applies for low level, but really for anyone in our adult ed. I mean, this has been my mantra, I think, my whole life in adult ed, not just related to career pathways. But I think the best service that we can give our students, because we have them for such a short time, relatively speaking, to most educational systems, the best thing that we can do for our students is help them understand themselves better and determine how they learn best. And so if we're not integrating into our instructional delivery, like for example, once a lesson is taught, do you talk about to your students how they learn that? What strategies did they use to learn that information? That will be more helpful than any content that our students learn in adult education, because those are the strategies that they can apply when they get out in the real world. So focus on those metacognitive skills with our students. Are you doing that? I'll say more about contextualized instruction in a minute. Project-based learning, have any of you done that? Okay, so a lot of programs that are moving in the direction of this career path in a serious way, moving in the direction, are having their teachers develop lessons that bring students together to solve problems. So this idea of project-based learning, that's essentially what project-based learning is, where they have to work together to apply the skills that you want them to learn, and by doing something, by either creating something, by developing a budget, by building a model or building a structure of some sort. So there are tons of lessons that you can just, by Google, a search on Google, project-based learning, whole bunch could come up. So that's something that you could ask your teachers, or if you're a teacher, you could look into. And look at the ones that might relate to you. When most of my career, no matter what position I've had, I've always done some level of teaching with students, because that's what got me in this field. It's why I fell in love with the field. And no matter what I do, I don't want to lose that connection and relevance. And so when I was moving in the direction of this career pathway stuff, I wanted to see how it would affect my teaching. I typically teach low-level reading to students who are really struggling with just basic reading, like word recognition, vocabulary, basic reading comprehension. I have my typical 8 lessons that I teach, and I cycle through them. We work on word recognition strategies, comprehension strategies, building vocabulary. These are the lessons. We all, as teachers, if you're a teacher, I'm sure you have your go-to lessons, right? That's the first thing that you take a look at. How can I contextualize this? What activities can I do once I teach this lesson that will have my students working together to figure out how to apply these skills in a work or life situation? That's what you want to do first, is enhance what you already do. Take a look at those lessons that you already teach, or the way that you already teach, and think about how you can contextualize them, integrate the student engagement piece to get your students applying these skills in a career context. And then project-based learning. Is that something that it kind of goes with the student engagement, is creating activities that help students apply the skills that they're learning? And finally, is you may want to restructure how you deliver services. Maybe it's not best to take anyone who comes at 2 o'clock for a reading, no matter who they are. Maybe that's not the best way to offer courses. I mean, that's a pretty standard way, adult ed of the past, right? Maybe we need to organize services differently. This is one of several examples that I've seen. So this is a program out of Messina, New York. This is what they did. So they felt like they still wanted to focus just on skills, not get into all the career context business or career pathway business if they needed the foundation skills. So they have this basic skills track, which is the first step of any pathway they offer. And it's fine to say that. It's fine to say that someone needs to really have a foundation of literacy skills before they start getting serious about a career or employment direction. I mean, a lot of times the job training, you have to have a level of skills to even get into some of those courses. So it's okay to have like a foundations track. And then maybe you want to focus your instruction on people who are really getting into employment. And that's where you can really get in with a partner or do that job training stuff. And then you have the college prep track. For those people that are going on to college, really need to pass the tests, you can be focused on more of the academic content. This kind of approach of service delivery is happening more and more in adult education, if you're not doing it already. And then the other piece is to make how are you going to articulate pathways that might be available to students? We said that we have that UEN Futures or whatever it was called. Someone said that yesterday, right? They have Utah Futures. They said, people said that that site has career pathways available. You can go to ONET. ONET has pretty much every occupation available. You can print off position descriptions. Each position description shows you what skills are required for that job. You know, you need to have some visual that will show what students need to do in order to achieve a degree or get a credential. The reason I show you this is because, you know, this is what Ohio had. Ohio had this ridiculous thing when I started with them. They're the adult ed system, and they're the education partner, and all the different pathways that they had showed you what CTE classes and then what college classes they needed. And I'm like, well, that's great. You're the ed partner, but you're not CTE, so why do they have CTE on all these pathways? Well, now they're changing them because they were like, oh, okay, duh. I mean, who delivers their classes like this in adult ed? No one, right? Do you? Do you offer English 1, 2, 3, and 4? Do you offer math in the categories of algebra, algebra 1, geometry? Right. That's not how we deliver classes in adult ed. So why, if we're the educational partner, were they showing pathways in the workforce system that, you know, we couldn't use with our students? So now they're doing this. They're recreating them all. And now, if you choose nursing, it'll have the various jobs that you go up the path, and you click on them, and there's the skills you need to get that, be successful in that job, or the credentials you need to get that position. These can be used now with adult ed students. Like, can you imagine what the adult ed people were doing with these? I mean, it took me coming in there to do the training and them using them for 3 years to say, how the hell are you using these? They all shook their head that they were. I'm like, what's the conversation? Please tell me. I want to know. And through conversation, I realized none of them were using them. They were shaking their head because they were supposed to be using them. But come on. It shouldn't have taken a genius to know that they weren't going to be used for adult ed. So now they're creating these, and they'll be much more user-friendly. That's the same kind of thing you all need. And you can get it from, you can take a look at what other states are doing. You know, if you really search career pathways, you can find a lot of different examples. The thing is, you need to have something that if a student says, I want to be whatever it is, a nurse or something, you need to put down in front of them something that shows what that means in terms of what I have to do to get there. Did you remember the definition? Didn't it say the transparency of seeing the progression? That's part of a career pathway, is students knowing that it's this lifelong thing, that it's you know, they can continue up the ladder, they can stop in and stop out. Showing that, you need some kind of visual to show it. Am I going to run out of time? Did someone have a question? Yes.
Is this available? I mean,
These have not gone live yet because they're still in the pilot phase. But I told someone yesterday that, because I was sharing with the directors, which you were there. Yeah, as soon as they go live, which I think they're not going to go live until January 1, then I'll send someone so they can share it with you guys. But there are some other good sites. Like, I think Minnesota's adult ed system has some good ones that I think reflect adult ed. And I can, if you email me, I can give you some examples of states where I think have some more adult ed relevant models. Once these are done, though, they're going to be the best because they not only show you this, but when you click the 4 teachers, it's going to have lessons on how you specific to those skills. So that's going to be really good when it's done. Yes?
So could you use maybe the high school ones and then just modify it for your adult students? Because I know a lot of high schools have.
I am so sorry.
Of, this is what you need to do.
Don't call me. Yeah, I mean, I think that people who were using even those before were kind of adapting it, or kind of, I mean, we, in adult ed, we are like known, unfortunately, for adapting everything because nothing is made for us. So my thing is, this really pissed me off because everyone across the world is saying, under WIOA, that we are the education partner. So for once in our lifetime, we should be reflected appropriately in the resources that are being used. And we have to adapt, even though we're like supposed to be like the education partner for every state in the country for, basic skills, part of the workforce development system. CTE isn't a core partner. Colleges isn't a core partner. Adult education is a core workforce development partner. So I don't think we should have to adapt. I think it should be made for us. So that's what I think you as a state should tell your people if you don't have this. But I didn't say that. Yeah, I always say get in trouble. Okay, so lesson planning. So these are some things that I want you to think about. I'm going to say more about the instructional piece in the next session I do, about how you can focus more on contextualizing and using the instructional shifts. But for the people who, do you all use the college and career readiness standards in your instruction? Okay. Do you all know what the instructional shifts are? Like focus, coherence, knowledge, all of those things. I'll talk about those. Well, how many minutes do I have? Like 12 more minutes? I think, do I have a slide that, oh, I have a slide that says it. So incorporating the instructional shifts and applying career context. If you are a teacher or you oversee teachers, you should have some kind of lesson planning process. Do you have that? Okay. The 2 pieces that I would recommend that you add to your lesson planning process are how you incorporate the instructional shifts, and I'll say more about what those are in a minute, and 2, how you're going to contextualize this lesson to careers. There should be, if you're truly wanting to do a career pathway model of service delivery, then every lesson that you teach should have some connection to the career world or the work world. Okay? And so that's how I would approach lesson planning. Think about student engagement. We've kind of already said that, in having students work in groups. And then using technology. There's a lot of technology programs out there that you can take a look at that will help, that provide contextualized instruction, because I know some of you have those computer programs, right? Or that's how the focus of your adult ed program delivery. It's also something that students can use to do some research. Like if you teach a lesson and you want to say, go figure out how this applies in manufacturing, they might need to go do some research on that as a group. So using technology to do some of this is effective. Now, I just want to talk about has anyone heard of these instructional shifts? If you're using the standards, you should have, okay? But these instructional shifts, the college and career readiness standards are what our peers have told us will prepare people most for success in college and careers. So focusing our instruction on the skills that are covered in these standards would be my recommendation. So most of your instruction should be on what the college and career readiness standards are. Coherence means helping students understand what they've learned, how what they've learned connects to what they already know. Is this a big revelation under college and career readiness standards? No. It's fundamental adult learning theory. This is Malcolm Knowles and is good for what you should all be doing. It is after you teach something, you talk about how this relates to what they know. How do you see, what do you think about when you, about these skills you just learned or about this information you just learned? Help them connect it to something tangible. Or before you teach something, say, what do you already know about this? It helps bring that to their mind so they're connecting their new learning to their old. These kinds of things help our effective learning. Rigor is not learning something harder or I don't know how people always confuse rigor with meaning more challenging. But rigor means that you learn something so well it's fluent. And so what better way to learn something fluently than to have students apply it to the real world or, a career context. So building in that opportunities for students to do that or to get up and teach it. You got the answer? Well, tell us how you did that. So rigor. Complexity is using materials that pull people up. So often in adult ed and over my years in adult ed, we always want to find materials at level, and then we wonder why students don't ever progress. Well, the reality is we should always be trying to pull them forward. So the materials that we use with students should always be slightly above their level, so we're pulling them forward. Have we thought about that? Do we think about that when we choose materials in our classroom? Evidence is making sure or building in activities so students demonstrate their learning. If you're a teacher and you say, are you done with that exercise? Yeah. If that's your way of seeing if they learned something, time to come up with a new strategy. It's not just about completing pages in a book or completing a worksheet or finishing an assignment, but having to demonstrate through some activity that they've learned what you're wanting them to learn. And then knowledge, it's not just about the basic skills, but helping them learn history and, science and things like that. So those are the instructional shifts that we're supposed to be integrating into our instruction, says the career pathway or the college and career readiness standards. If we do this just in general across all of our teaching and service delivery, we're going to be preparing people better for work and life because they are learning the skills better, learning how to apply them in context. Okay? I'm going to talk about smarter in the next session. I don't have time in this one, but the person who was in the session before me in this room speaking talked about how great graphic organizers are. I'm a big proponent of smarter, which is basically mapping out various things or various answers to questions. My very simple explanation of smarter, in case you don't come to my next session, is just put in this box what we learned. And we'll just stick with fractions because it's worked with us through this session. How can you use fractions in the real world? And the students have to then talk and work out various scenarios. So it's, again, it's having students, engaging them in their learning. I did give you some examples in the PowerPoint of some things that rural programs are doing related to these aspects. So this is a program in southwestern Ohio. They basically went to their school district and, well, first of all, they looked at their LMI and realized that these jobs in the school district were the biggest areas of need. And so they went to their school and say, can our students have these jobs or, for internships and things? And that's what they did. And they have, wait, is this, oh no, this is a different one. I'm sorry. This is one that worked with an employer in their area for ESL students to offer English classes and a fitness certification at the gym that the students were going to. That's something that you can do, is connect with employers to offer some opportunities. This one is the one I was just talking about, where they found that the two growth areas were school maintenance janitors and school food prep. They're like, hey, that's us, because we're the only school district here. And so they went to the school district, and now their students are filling the positions that they have in internships, and some of them are being hired. Eastland Fairfield, which is where I live, in the rural community where I live, and they developed these what they're calling contextualization toolkits. And so they have built these lessons around various contexts, construction. They have one in food prep. They have a bunch of, they have like over 30 of them developed. And they are things that students can then use in the classroom to apply the skills that they've learned. I love this idea. I think it's brilliant. And other programs around the country are starting to do this similar kind of thing. I could give you other examples. I always plan more than I need. The other thing is take a look at your orientation process. Make sure that you have integrated in there a focus on job choices, future direction. Some programs are saying to their students when they walk in, this is the first step in your career pathway. Take the language away from GED and basic skills and make it about future and life and things like that. Okay? Any questions? And right on time, but I skipped over some critical things. Anyway, thank you. If there's anything that I mentioned, because I tried to just give you little snippets of all the different elements, but I have tons of examples of any of these things that I mentioned. What to do in your orientation, what assessments to choose, what you could, some curriculum or instruction ideas. If you want specifics on any of these elements, feel free to email me. Thank you and have a great rest of your conference.